Thank you very much for joining us in this conversation that we're having today. I'll have you, the guest, to introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Tadiwanashe, and I am young, aspiring well, around the age of 27, and I'm a creative and doing radio presentation, radio production, video production, cinematography, in a nutshell. And I'm also a student at the University of Zimbabwe, hoping that I'll be someone someday. And I was an addict for quite some time, substance abuse, an addict in other things, the unmentionables, and also an addict of success, to the point that it pushed me to the brink of the topic that we want to be dwelling on today, that is drugs and substance abuse. Yeah, I think that's pretty much about that in my introduction.
All right. So maybe you can actually share with us your first encounter, I guess, with the substance that you then got addicted to. How did you get into that?
It started off with alcohol, the innocent alcohol, as some would say. That was still in high school. We were exposed. We would see, relatives. They are the legal age of drinking alcohol, and they're indulging. And to us at that age, it seemed pretty cool. And as you were growing up, people would say, you drink your sorrows away, those catchphrases. And you would watch movies, people are drinking, a glass of scotch and everything. It seems cool at that time. And when we started doing that, we ended up having, a dependency on alcohol. If you want to have some fun, you drink alcohol. If you want to have a good time, you drink alcohol. And it unfortunately got out of hand, and I didn't know any better. And then unfortunately, because of the pressures of life, you're a young male, you're told not to speak out, you're told not to tell people your problems. We then graduated to smoking then. It started off with the innocent spliffs of marijuana. It would give you the relief at that time, and then the dosages then got bigger and bigger. For you to get that relief that you're looking for, you then have to smoke more and more. Then it was cigarettes, and unfortunately it got to a point where I got dependent on it. I couldn't eat, I couldn't function without smoking. And then the thing is, there's no ceteris paribus in life. We can't hold other factors constant. In our industry, the creative industry, you'd have to be we were exposed, and unfortunately the exposure is still there. We were exposed to people that indulge and think it's cool and say it's cool. We're exposed to role models that say it's cool, it's nice. So you're there, you're in your comfort zone whereby it's being endorsed. So I got to a point where I didn't recognize that I was now a slave to the substances that I was taking. And unfortunately, it made me spiral out of control, lost touch with my dear ones, lost touch with the rift that is there at birth. That is to say, we don't communicate, you don't talk, you don't speak out your feelings. It widened because you now so to say relying more on these substances. They become your friends, they become the go-to companions when you need to let things out. Maybe perhaps when you are drunk, you cry, people say kadhakwa. But then uto express anobho kana kadhakwa anochema, but uto chema because pane zvakubuda after wadhakwa pacho ikoko. So unfortunately, that was it then. And unfortunately, I can't take back the years that I lost, because I did lose years when I was in this drugs and substance abuse era, which I can safely say now I've been 4 years sober.
All right. How long did you struggle with the substance abuse?
Substance abuse. Um, Substance abuse. How long did I struggle with substance abuse? To really put a definite time period would I would lie, but what I can say is over 10 years I think that was from the age of, I can say from the age of 16 up to 26, which is just about a year ago. That's when I was struggling with addiction, which got worse and worse. And addiction sometimes may just put your drugs and substance abuse, but then there's also mangoma addictions, and the other ones that I say, the unmentionables, that I was struggling with for those 10 years.
And at what point did you realize that I actually have a problem? Because it started gradually. You're looking at some people, you said, you who were drinking and you thought it was cool, and you got into that. But then at what point did you realize that I actually have a problem?
So when I fully realized that I had a problem was, I think it was around 2024, and at that time I was working with there were organizations that I was working with. They were advocating for they were preaching rather about awareness. They were preaching about the dangers of substance abuse, and I was working with those organizations. And also around that time I was also working radio at that time. So I was being exposed now. You hear people talk about it, and then you recognize, no, this is addiction. And there was now the time where Marino Boshaik, and you really need a cigarette, and you cannot do without. You cannot do. It's like you can literally shake. You can't. The way I react, the way I, so you then recognize, okay, why in that element was ochwana manje, why we go talk of what happened, and you then recognize, oh my God. And Mangwana, okay, this is the last time I'm going to smoke. Mangwana, early in the morning, especially when the weather is cold, okay, let me just take one last one. And then you realize, I cannot take one last one. I need the next one. And then I need the next one. Okay, I'll stop next week. Next week becomes next month. And then next month becomes next year. And, it's now a cycle. It's that unending cycle. It's that oblivion of urges and needs that you then find yourself in.
And how did this affect you as a student? How did this affect your schoolwork? How did this affect your relationships with even your friends, family, and all?
Well, it affected everything a lot. Starting with schoolwork, you are absent for lectures. You give yourself reasons to be absent. Sometimes you're too sober to go for a lecture, or you're too high to go for a lecture, or sometimes you need a fix, and time yacho awufana ngori ku lecture waumene unotsvaka mari, and of which mari yacho dai kwakunzi inenge ichizoshanda zvemusoro inoningirira wakadhakwa nema friends, let's go out, you spend more than you're making. Plus kune love, you fake, it's fake love after all when you realize it. Yekuti kana usina mari, come let's and then they're feeding on, unknowingly they're feeding on to that monster that is inside of you, that wants that fulfillment. And unfortunately, like I said, I ended up deferring at some point. because of makomba andazvicherera ekuti you've been absent for this, you've been absent for that. That means missing marks. That means you the course that you're supposed to be doing auchatoziva kuti chii chiri kuitika, watooneka disconnect. Then family wise now, because of my reactions and anchataura vanhu vangoti haari rude. They don't understand necessarily sometimes the space that you're in. Sometimes you genuinely need help. But then because now uneka I don't care attitude kakuya ma behavioral alterations anenge akuitika uchi because of substance abuse, unongowa ne aka don't care attitude kekuti waramba saka zvina basa, but you need that help.
All right, I'll have to hold you on that. We need to take a short break and then we come back and continue that conversation.
Saka vanhu ndaitamba navo ndainyanya kudhakwa stereki. Hapana zvinhu zvandaikwanisa kuita asi hangu kukuru ndaibhadhara. Saka pandakazodzingwa kwandaigara zvanzi hapana kuti tigare nemunhu ari kudhakwa nezvavo izvi zvinozotipa problem. Vanhu pandakatanga kutsvaga weimba pandakazowana imba panapa. Ndakatanga kugara ndichodhakwa. Ngoswera ndichodhakwa but hapana kuendinesa nobuda because kurarama kwangu zhinji neitoenda kunombonotraya kubhegawo mukati mune mimi vamwe. Sina yacho vaiwana. Hapana chaunomboburitsa bhozi ngochingofunga kudhara. Hazvine dzimwe shamwariwo dzatinosangana nadzo dzakawandira kudoro ikoko. Saka unosvika pakurasikirwa nezvinhu zvakawanda hauna chaunoita chaunoburitsa chine musoro. Asi zviri kuti unokwanisa kuwanawo chekuita ndogona kuwana zvimwe zvandokwanisa kutengesawo nezvibatsirawo pakurarama. Nezotoni vechechi panapa vatenda zvikuru bhozi vaingoti pesi pavauira every Sunday vaigara vakandikansera nyeroro. Kudzamara ndatozoona kuti zvandiri kuita zvakashata zvikandizosiya kusvika pandiri nhasi. Funga nezvahandatooneka train isiri kudoro. Nedzimwe shamwari dzandoitamba nadzo ndakutochinja nekutamba navo. Ndinongotendawo nevandogarawo navo panapa. Nyangwe ndisinawo chekudya vanhu vanotonzwa tsitsi kuti komasoma vanonditi soma zvavo. Komasoma madyere. Kuti vandina vanoturwa chikafu waita vondipawo. Saka ndofanira kutenda.
Back to our conversation. Tadiwa, you were talking about how it affected your schoolwork, your relations, and everything. But then when you got to decide that you wanted to kick the habit, what forms of rehabilitation did you get to access?
The rehabilitation that I got to access, I sort to say grace, because I was planning, and that's the dangers of substance abuse. You procrastinate, and you procrastinate a lot. So I was planning on saying, okay, I'm going to leave. So, and unfortunately, sometimes the people that I was reaching out to, they would half-heartedly try to help. So, fortunately for me, a brother invited me to church. It was church. And then I went. I felt the urge that I think I need to at least just try, go to church. And the events that I voted there were miraculous. They were a miracle. I felt the conviction to say, okay, I'm going to at least try to give my life to Jesus Christ then. And let's see where he takes me. So one thing that I got to understand was Anzi Weokadar. So I went Nagadar. Then I still remember it was on a Sunday, but things happened. Then Sunday yoyo mungwe vatwa ene doro kwa vanoya nazo vaene doro rake nchichi but andina kudhakwa. So I took zin but andina kudhakwa. Then I asked myself the question, so inini kana ndichiti zviti ndatendeuka, all right, zvinoita here kuti ndiende ndakadhakwa, zvinoita here ndiende ndichinwa fodya? I think I have to stop. Then I had a short prayer that I had. You know what, Jesus, if you are there and if you're the miracle working Jesus that people say you are, please I think then someone then on Monday evening invited me for prayer. So the first rehabilitation that I had was prayer. It was consistent prayer. I would go for prayer manero. Then the miraculous thing is the people that I was hooked with, that I would smoke with each and every evening, ndo vanhu vakatanga kutendeuka vachiuya vakuniteera kuprayer kwekwe. Okay, what's happening here? Okay, it's good. It's unconventional to the scientific people, but that's what was happening then. Okay, then the other guy introduced me to fasting. Like, okay, mama wakambokura vachitiudza kuti utsanya mwana utsanya. I started fasting. So from smoking cigarettes, I would smoke like a pack in a day and a half. I started smoking 2 cigarettes a day because it's near impossible to just cut like that. There are withdrawal symptoms, there's everything. So in the first week already, I had cut off marijuana and I had cut off alcohol. And mind you, I could not eat without smoking marijuana. But then appetite, okay, all right, let me continue with this since it seems to be working. Then I continued going for prayer. Started the prayer group. Fortunately for me, there was a brother who was there who then introduced me to reading the word. So instead of going out to smoke, I'm reading the word. So there was now a substitute for zvinhu zvandenge zvekuti pfungwa dzangu padziri kufunga kuningirina ndakufunga kuverenga shoko rere. So that then became pretty much my rehabilitation for quite some time as I was learning. And then fortunately, by some orchestrations of the universe, God, I then began meeting different people. People that were becoming more of like positive influences in my life. People that would, instead of saying on a Saturday, as was the usual, let's go to a bar, let's go for prayer, let's go for an all-night. Then go for an all-night. Okay, so the same exhilarating feeling that I felt when I was with this crowd is being echoed with this one. But then with this one, I don't need to spend any money. I'm just here and then I'm feeling something. So that then became my rehabilitation. And then the acceptance, okay, I'm an addict and I need help. So though the help was divine, I got that help and then I got to accept that and then to a point speaking out to say, gentlemen, gentlemen. And then the people then understood. Then there was that communication. Okay, that stereotype, I've set that aside. And I'm saying it, though I'm also saying it to Jesus, I'm also saying it to a brother in church. Verse wangu heartbreak. Because at that time, the Paganese Zakavazaitika and Vadarambano was Karawangu, they vachanzwisise kuti mukomana atendeuka asingachanzwisisike maheartbreak anga kurova but ndandane vanhu vekutaurira vekuudza. So that was pretty much the journey and yakabva yaramba ichiripo journey yacho. I can say yapera ichiripo. I'm still learning stuff and my experience andakaita ipapo akundikwanisiswa kuti ndinge ndichiuyawo ndichimira pamberi pevanhu kudai so ndichivaudza, though hapo paine vamwe vekuti vanogona kunge vari vachindiziva ndiri muchechi ndiri mudiki vanogona kutojaja because that's also something that I also went through, my judgments. Saka iwewe nemasvikiro awakaita iwewe wakatoita slave yemogo, but zvinotowanikwa zvinhu izvozvo and sometimes it's not necessarily our choice.
All right, that brings my question to you that in your work with mental health issues, what is the general misconception about addiction in our communities?
Okay, so speaking of addiction, our communities might think that addictions have something to do with the spirituality, which are partly correct and partly less informed. Why? Because our society attributes most of the things which have to do with psychology as a spiritual thing. Why? Because when we are talking about emotion, emotion is something which you can feel from the inside, which then we say this is now a spirit, because it's something which we don't get to understand. But in general, we are saying as clinicians at Vitality Wellness, we practice multidisciplinary approach systems, whereby we are saying yes, it worked for you going to church, and then when you are talking about prayer, I can make parallels with what we have in psychology, something that we call cognitive restructuring and positive thinking, to be specific. And then there we have what we call positive affirmation, whereby you have to repeat something positive about yourself. So you notice that when you are praying, you are speaking positive to yourself. You are taking yourself away from all those negative thoughts that you've been having. And going to church, we are now having people who are positive minded. Unlike in the past, when you were having friends who were leading you into taking substances. So right there, we are having a change of circle, a change of friends, having yes environment, which is actually good. So yeah, that avenue it's good. It can give success. And then also misconception about addictions is let me explain it from a scientific point of view. So when you are having an addiction, we are having someone who is having a mind which is craving a neurotransmitter called dopamine. And then, so this is a success hormone, but normally it's known as a pleasure hormone, meaning that when you are having success, you get this pleasure, which you were talking about. You were looking for pleasure, and then also you end up not enjoying the things which you used to enjoy. So let's take it like this. So your mind have dopamine, and then your mind also have what is called serotonin. Serotonin, it's a mood hormone, meaning that it governs all the emotions that you have, so that you create moods like love, like anger, like sadness, going on. And then so each and every time when you are taking substances, your mind is producing more and more dopamine, because you are enjoying, you are feeling some form of success, you are enjoying. And then, but if you continue doing this because of addiction, you find yourself being dependent on it. And then, meaning that you will be using more and more. So we are having an increase in the production of dopamine. And if this dopamine is produced in excess, a person might end up having what we call psychotic symptoms. That's number one. Number two, you mentioned you having like anger outburst. Exactly. So how that gets to happen is whenever you are using substances and there is an increase in dopamine production, consequently there is a reduction in serotonin levels, meaning that your mood will be affected from being a positive person to a negative person. Instead of being happy, you are now sad. Instead of being calm, you are now anger. You are now an angry person. So with that comparison, what you get is you end up doing those kind of behaviors. So when you are being dependent on this, what you'll be thinking is you are fixing the problem, but the behavior that a person will be doing will be actually causing the problem. Why? Because you are not happy. And then, so most people mistake happiness and enjoyment. Like for example, if I am to ask, what is the difference between kufara and kunakizwa? Most people will say, it's one and the same thing. But those are two different things. The other one is dopamine caused, and then another one is serotonin caused. So by taking substances, you will end up not enjoying the things that you used to enjoy before. Why? Let's say, for example, in our minds, there is what we call synaptic gaps, whereby these are gaps which then collect these neurotransmitters. So each and every time that we do a normal activity, our bodies produce just enough dopamine so that you are motivated and you do that task over and over again. Task like bathing, task like waking, task like eating, you get dopamine. So when you are using, when you are taking substances, these substances makes an excess production in these dopamine levels. So your synaptic gap used to be this big, and then now it gets to be this big. So each and every time that you are going to do those normal activities that you used to enjoy, the dopamine that you are given, you will not be able to fill this that gap. So when it's not when it's not able to fill that gap, that's when you notice those simple activities like bathing, going to work, eating, etc., they no longer interest you. You are now looking for higher producing dopamine tasks. And then where will you get those? You have to go back to the bottle. You have to go back to the cigarette. You have to go back to the cannabis. So this is what we'll be having. But it's all about addiction, and then some will then attribute that these are maples. We yet is something which is happening in our minds.
All right, and maybe if you can also speak on the relationship that's there between the pressure, the societal pressure that's there on especially young men to succeed in their careers, looking at like a flashy lifestyle, and then also maybe getting depressed because you can't do that and taking drugs.
Okay. So speaking of societal pressures, what we have is there is something which we call toxic masculinities, whereby as men we are told that it's mainly to be drinking alcohol. And then sometimes we might have, let's say for me, me and my wife, we have an argument. As men, we advise each other that leave the room, go to the bar, drink, and then you come back later. But that's not a good solution to it. So our society is putting unnecessary pressure on us, and then as young men, and then which then makes us end up using these substances. I think Mr. Masimba will give more.
Yeah. I think just to add on to that, it's unfortunate we do not quite get a history of where he comes from, the number of people and siblings he has, his cultural upbringing, the kind of community that he grew with, because all these environmental factors could have possibly led him here. We say the same fire that melts wax hardens an egg, which means put in front of the same drug, some boys walked away, others walked towards it. So we want to distinguish and say, why did Taku go away, other boys were walking away from? What are the factors in his upbringing? What are the factors in his psychosocial support that made him vulnerable to the drug versus other boys? Maybe the peer pressure, the pressure that you've mentioned, maybe there's so much demand in his environment for him to be successful. Suppose he's the firstborn child in the family, suppose he's the only boy in the family, suppose he's the only one in the clan who has gone to university. All those factors, we cannot run away from them when we eventually want to sit down and say, why is he where he is today? So yeah, well, sometimes we take it from a very superficial level. We just say, I found him drunk, so he must be careless. We actually want to dig deeper and say, where did this come from? What are other factors? We can stop him from drinking, but those factors can bring back, which we call a relapse, can bring back the drinking 2-3 years later because they are not solved. They remain unresolved. Yeah, so there could be so many background issues that are pushing him towards what he's doing, and those need to be addressed as well. Of course, the emergence now is probably to stop him or reduce his uptake until he stops, but much more work is needed to address those things that are in the background that might pull him back into the drugs or might have caused him to go into the drugs in the first place. Yeah.
All right. I think we're running out of time. I'll just need you, like, in less than a minute, to just talk about how you're managing your triggers now. You've been clean for a year. How you're managing your triggers, like, briefly.
So I'm managing my triggers. Like I said, going to church has been very helpful, and expressing myself, especially when I need those things. Sometimes I go to people whom I know. I can tell, mazano pakaipa, craving, because the cravings come, and I don't want to let the cravings come. And to also link it with dopamine, dopamine, because also there's also that time emotional repression and depression as well. You feel down naturally because of mama nigrina, awembu nigrina. So in those times, I also then listen to music. I also then read. I become creative. Write things down. Write down what I'm feeling at that particular time. Try to tackle my communication problems, because at the end of the day, that is what we were taught. That is how we were raised, in the midst of communication problems, where what we were saying, but you cannot express, you cannot speak out, you cannot tell the next person how you're feeling, and sometimes, like I said, writing, acting, being creative, kuenda pane vamwe vautunoziva kuti kana ndiri around ningi, I'm definitely not going to indulge. So that's basically just about it.
All right. Thank you very much, Tadiwa, for coming through and sharing your story.
And thank you very much for also having me and for giving me a voice.
I'm Edith Mazio Fatapfuma. I'm the lead and managing consultant for Vitality Wellness Zimbabwe. Vitality Wellness is really an organization that supports mostly private sector partners to respond to workplace well-being programs. We don't want to come in with solutions for staff wellness programs, but rather we see ourselves as coming in to support initiatives that are already in-house, and also to support our clients to develop tailored evidence-based approaches to responding to wellness. And we really support in augmenting what you already have in place and finding new ways of programming that responds to and understands that human beings will always be human beings. So that said, we also really push for behavior informed responses to addressing workplace wellness issues. There's an assumption, sadly, a wrong assumption in our community that seems to think that when they see a child, a young adult, who has succumbed or who is taking substances and abusing alcohol and the whole spectrum of substances that are available in our community, there's a tendency to blame the parent. Society is kind of looking and saying, you allowed your child to do this, you were a bad parent, or you didn't raise your child on goodly and godly principles. And it ignores the fact that children, young adults, have other communities and spaces where they interact, and they are role models. It's actually an issue of who are the role models in our communities. What is it that they are admiring from their peers, and the choices that are made at an individual level. So it's very sad when I continually hear parents who are broken down, like the one that we've just watched, who receive judgment from community that the parent is responsible for what has happened to the child. This is one of the reasons that I've seen many parents who hide their children away from their relatives and friends, because they are fearing that judgment. And that is the reason why parents of children who have substance use disorders also end up themselves with a mental health condition, because they are being judged as if they're the ones who caused this. So I think society needs to be kinder and to be more supportive of family and friends to say, what is it that you can do to support? If you can't support, then at least just keep quiet. Don't be unkind with your comments, because everything that you say to a parent who is struggling with a child who has a substance use situation, you are actually breaking that family down even more. So just be kind, or don't say anything if you can't show up for them in that manner. At a national level, we all need to have an appreciation and understanding of what mental health is and what affects people's mental health. I'm sure you know that right now we are in a crisis situation as a country with regards to mental health issues, and we've seen an increase in the past 4 to 5 years in suicide acts that have been completed, and lots more attempts. And it's now at a point where we need everybody to come on board. So this is not just workplace initiatives anymore. And even when we train in workplace setups, the idea that we have with our awareness campaigns is that we want people to take these conversations and dialogues to family setup and to communities, because we are now at a point where we need almost like all hands on deck. What I see as one of our biggest challenges right now to addressing mental health in our communities is the issue around stigma. So it's affecting communities and also the workplace space. So if people feel that they are going to be discriminated against, if people know that they have a mental health challenge or they are stressed, maybe even with a life situation, a relationship setup, or a financial situation that is troubling them, there is the sense that how safe do people feel to talk about that in the workplace with their peers or even with their team leader. We do know that when you look at, for example, information that we have coming out of the Ministry of Health, is that depression, for example, the ministry does acknowledge that at least 25 to 30% of Zimbabweans are suffering from depression. So if we take that and move from a community context and come to a workplace context, I think any employer can also rightly assume that at least 25 to 30% of their employees may be suffering from a subclinical mental health condition, which requires just understanding and psychosocial support. And most of these are not people wanting to be diagnosed with mental health conditions, but just to be in a safe space where they're able to communicate and talk about what they're going through. So I really think people need to pay more attention. They need to have more empathy and to have an approach that allows people to open up and talk to them about what they're going through. If you would like to talk to one of our counselors, there is a link that we've provided below and telephone numbers. The link takes you straight to a booking form where you can book your appointment online.